while Zelensky speaks in New York, you have these guys traveling all throughout the United States to encourage more Americans to stand with Ukraine.
Before we continue, we invite you to follow our channel, the only American show reporting live from Ukraine every day.
There's word today that Ukrainian President Zelensky, in an interview that will be broadcast later on ABC, said he believes the war with Russia is closer to an end than many believe, and he has called on allies to strengthen Ukraine's army. Let's get more from Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine. What do you think about what Zelensky says today, Joe?
Well, Bob, good afternoon from Kyiv. The all-clear alarm just sounded here, although there are explosions outside of the city as the Russians attack Ukraine this afternoon. But yeah, indeed, I think this is Zelensky's strategy and message is that, we face something very difficult, he's saying, but Ukraine is showing that victory is possible. And that, it's, I think the analogy is sort of like, I think I mentioned this before, but if you're on a couch eating potato chips and you say you want to climb a mountain or run a marathon, you don't do that the next day. You have to achieve a lot of things sort of step by step. And, or as Ukrainians say, malu po malu, little by little. And so I think that clearly is what President Zelensky's message is in the United States this week is, look what Ukrainians have done in the Black Sea. Look what they're on Russian soil in Kursk. They've been able to use drones to hit several Russian munitions depots in the past week. And if, these are the moments Ukrainians have opened windows of opportunity. Before those windows close, let's work more quickly to achieve results here. And I think someone who described this pretty well is a Ukrainian civil society activist, Ruslan Koharchuk. He's based here in Kyiv. And he wrote the other day, and this is pretty widely shared around Ukraine. He said, President Zelensky is irritating the entire world. The reason is simple. Zelensky has chosen the path of resistance. But in the West, in case you didn't know, the West is only pretending to support Ukraine purely for show. It's a performance where they the Western politicians reluctantly play on the side of the forces of light. This is why Biden, Schultz, and others are not even hiding their frustration when Zelensky, who is fighting for the existence of the Ukrainians, insists on receiving permission to fight back. Putin and the Russian army have left Zelensky in Ukraine with no choice but to fight. But in today's civilized Western world, it is not acceptable to fight, kill, and die over territory. That's seen as almost barbaric. And Zelensky, Ruslan continues writing, Zelensky frustrates everyone by acting not as a modern European politician, but as a military colonel. And then he says this, and these following words, I think, really is something everyone deeply feels here these past several months. Ruslan Koharchuk writes, he says, the Ukrainian people, he says, now this is the most difficult part of this story. The Ukrainian people, all of us, will soon have to make a choice, each person. Do we stand with respectable European politicians, or do we stand with uncompromising Ukrainian soldiers? It's a grim decision because in either case, death will follow, either slow and shameful or quick and heroic, unless a miracle happens. And the miracle, he means, if the West really awakes and sends the weapons and the permission to use them, only then will triumph follow. And if Ukraine cannot hold on, soon you in the West will be faced with this same difficult choice. And I think there's a reason. So this guy wrote that on Facebook in Ukraine several days ago, and it was widely shared because people really do feel that this is the stark time to choose, good versus evil. And very notably, Bob, yesterday in New York, the Atlantic Council, which is a think tank based in Washington, every year when the United Nations gathers in New York, the Atlantic Council has this, it's called Global Citizen Awards ceremony. And yesterday, one of the awards was given to Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy. And notably, she was handed the award by Elon Musk. And this is very interesting because Meloni is very strong supporter of Ukraine. And Musk has been, he gave the Starlink satellites, or he let Ukraine use them in 2022. But he's been a very shaky voice. He's been, one of the voices saying Ukraine needs to negotiate. And now he's really aligned himself with President Trump's campaign for the White House. And so he's he's not seen as someone who supports Ukraine, certainly by Ukrainians. But he handed this award to Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy. And in her speech to that audience, including some people hostile to Ukraine, she said in English, she said, we defend Ukraine because we've seen from history the chaos of a world in which the law of the strongest prevails. And she encouraged the audience to remember, like, not to be embarrassed of the values of Western civilization. There's been a lot of problems, but the West, she says, it's not about territory, it's about ideas, it's about democracy, equal rights for men and women. It's about secular governments and standing for the rule of law, and this idea of that life is sacred and that freedom matters. And so Meloni, in this very powerful speech, was directly talking to some of the leading voices who were calling for Ukrainians to surrender, such as Elon Musk and those in the world of Donald Trump. And so I think this is part of the sort of the same type of message that President Zelensky is trying to make here in Washington, and he's doing it cheerfully. But yet it is like it's fearful, but in an absolutely serious and dire way, because if something doesn't change soon, then many people think it will not be possible for Ukraine to win in a real way.
Yes, you can certainly understand where Zelensky is coming from. Joseph, now that the calendar has turned to fall, how concerned are you about Ukraine's energy supply? This will be the third winter of the war.
Well, I think that's one of the major reasons for this urgent campaign now to turn things around. You still have several months of decent weather, but I mean, it's going to be difficult because the infrastructure has been so heavily broken. But that said, as I saw in Odessa, I can still hear the deafening sound of generators everywhere from Odessa. But they've created a new structure. It doesn't look nice, it doesn't sound nice, but every block of the city there are multiple giant generators, and so. From that perspective, people are ready. It's not a very environmentally conscious way to keep, to have electricity. It's very inefficient. And it's interesting that many top environmental activists like Greta Thunberg don't talk about this, but, the Russia's destruction of Ukraine's energy grid, it ecologically has caused a lot of problems, and it's very inefficient. But I think Ukrainians are ready in many ways to face that. And I should note, Bob, right now, as I mentioned yesterday, those Ukrainian musicians, the Cultural Forces team, they're soldiers. They're in the military, but they're also, a lot of them are rock stars and like folk musicians and such before the big invasion. And they're making their way across the U.S. Last night they played in Baltimore. In their group is an opera singer who lost a leg in battle. My friend Sasha Bull, whose music is inspired by Cormac McCarthy. And tomorrow they're going to my parents' house in North Carolina. So it's a little strange connections in this time of geopolitical maneuvering.
We have many transplanted Chicagoans listening around the country. So it's North Carolina. What town there, Joseph?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh.
These guys, mainly they're going to play for like churches and community groups to share with Americans who believe in freedom to show what Ukraine really is beyond the politics. And this is a part of while Zelensky speaks in New York, you have these guys traveling all throughout the United States to encourage more Americans to stand with Ukraine.
Hope they come to Chicago. Finally, this text from one of our listeners, Bob, with Joseph always going to cafes, I was wondering if Ukraine grows coffee beans or if they have to import.
They import coffee, but Ukrainians love coffee. And even, when I'm in Donbass near the front lines, you can always get a good espresso or Americano or pour over coffee, even in places. In fact, today, one of my favorite cafes in Kyiv, they're closed today because they're replacing, they're getting new windows after the windows were destroyed in a missile attack. But tomorrow they'll be reopened and pouring fantastic coffee once again.
Go enjoy a cup. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?